Stephen Mitchley, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Hi, Jonathan. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. I'm excited to have a nice conversation with you today. We're going to be focusing on increasing productivity and business performance through prioritizing health within the workplace. I think this is, of course, super important from a human perspective. Like, we just want to be humane. We want to take care of our people. We want them to have a physically healthy, psychologically, emotionally healthy place to work. But it also has big impacts for the bottom line of the organization. It will increase productivity. It will increase other positive metrics and outcomes, performance outcomes for the organization. So we can really talk about it from both angles. As we get started, I wanted to share Stephen's bio with everybody. Stephen Mitchley, Chief Strategy Officer, leads Vitality Group's digital and global partner disciplines. He brings more than 25 years of experience and expertise in overseeing operations and technology to the Vitality Group product team. Mr. Mitchley joined Vitality Group's parent, South Africa-based Discovery Holdings Limited in 2000 and has had exposure across the group, leading large-scale process re-engineering activities and designing and building operations for new products and services. Prior to helping found the Vitality Group as COO in December of 2007, he headed up the Business Solutions Division, responsible for broad operating model design, quality management, resource planning, data integrity, business intelligence, and system support. He graduated from the University of Witwatersrand School of Mechanical Engineering in 1992. I'm sure I said that wrong. And then completed a master's degree with papers published internationally. Again, it is such a pleasure, Stephen, to be with you today. I always love having guests on from all over the world. It's a pleasure. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context before we launch on in?
Yeah, you didn't quite get that name right, but it's a difficult name, Witwatersrand. Yeah, I often describe myself as a reformed engineer. So although I was an engineer by profession, I joined Discovery and Vitality about 21 years ago now. And I was really attracted by this idea that their core purpose was to make people healthier. So you can imagine deep level gold mining, heavy technical engineering, and you go, what's this about? What are we doing for society? And starting with the company then, I think we were about 900 staff. I thought to myself, if I have a good day or bad day, at least I'll walk away knowing that I made people healthier. So it's my core purpose of making people healthier. I think it's something that really anchors us. And the topic today is really close to my heart. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you so much for a little bit more background. And yeah, so let's just dive right on in. What is the impact of health within the workplace? And we can think about health broadly. There's lots of different health outcomes. We're certainly concerned about worker stress and anxiety, burnout, but other chronic illness and physical safety. There's all sorts of different elements to this. So what do you see as some of those broad impacts?
Yeah, great question. I think something that you spoke about the bottom line. Back in the day, certainly when I was going through my management training, our objective was to maximize shareholders' wealth. And I think John Elkington changed that with the triple bottom line and said the companies have a duty of to report on financial, on social, and environmental. And I think we're strong advocates of saying, well, there's probably a bit more in there that we should be reporting on, especially the health of our people as well. There's a great opportunity for self-insured employers to make not only an impact on their productivity and the well-being of the employees, but also to have a societal impact as well. You think, well, intuitively, I think the listeners would know that a healthy worker or healthy employee is a productive employee. We know that as well. That makes sense. But we've got profound studies globally. So here in the US and the UK, that shows that there's a massive drain on the organization due to absenteeism, presenteeism. Some 38 days are lost on average per year due to health-related impacts. So there's a very direct correlation between your performance as a business and the health and well-being of the population. And we're advocates of investing in that because the returns are pretty substantial.
Yeah, and you mentioned absenteeism. And certainly that's a problem. Of course, beyond absenteeism is turnover. That's a huge expense and a problem for
Correct.
organizations. But I also think of things like withdrawal cognition. People who are still physically there, they show up, but they've mentally checked out because for whatever reason they decided that, why should they invest in the organization if the organization's not investing in them?
Yeah,
That's the situation where people show up to work and then they spend half their day looking for jobs somewhere else.
yeah, yeah,
And so
exactly. So it's
obviously
not
that
just
leads to lost productivity, that leads to negative team dynamics, a whole slew of
correct.
problems.
Yeah, I mean the Rand Europe and Cambridge study was really health related absenteeism and presenteeism, which didn't take into account these more cultural elements. We do see the Vitality program as being not only a carrot and stick approach with an outcome of um, lowering healthcare costs. That's one way to look at it, and obviously if you are doing that, you are protecting the bottom line. But it's broader than that. I think there is a sense of a need for the we at work. What we found is we install and support installation of vitality chat. So people on the coalface who are gathering around health themes and self-organizing, who go on walks with their colleagues. And there's a lot of a communion around that particular topic. And obviously that's got a spin-off effect on the broader sense of belonging. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think right at the end of his career, he said the most important thing is a feeling of belonging. It's so ingrained in us because we knew at our core that if you weren't part of a team, the line would eat you. You need to be able to contribute. And I think rallying behind common things beyond just the mission of the company is a good binding agent for organizations, and an important one as well.
So how can organizations go about prioritizing health of their people if they recognize both the human benefit of belonging, connection, and just health, the humanity of it, but also the bottom line impacts of it? They realize it's going to lead to greater levels of productivity and high performance. So how do we prioritize it? How do we start to put that into action and create, the kind of a culture around workplace health and well-being?
For me, it's the starting point for me is recognizing what problem you're trying to solve. We do a lot of, in the design discipline, we do a lot of design thinking. So often in product, there's a rush to say, well, let's make this thing look this way. But you really have to take a step back and say, well, that's great concept, but what problem are we trying to solve? And we're great proponents of incentivizing behavior. But then the question becomes, what do you incentivize? What are you trying to overcome? And I put to most people that health engagement is a bit of a misnomer. You don't really engage with a health plan so much as you engage in the sickness. So you go and see the doctor. That's not quite engaging in the health. And part of the problem and part of the blessing is that we, by nature as a species, are incredibly optimistic. I mean, if we actually think through the last year, the year before that, all the turmoil and the trouble that we've seen, you'd wake up in the morning and you probably wouldn't go to work. You'd be debilitated. But we don't do that. We wake up and we're optimistic that there's something better out there. But that also counts against us. We have this massive optimism about our ability to beat the odds. We have optimism around our performance. We have optimism around the state of our health. You ask the average employee, how have they done in their performance review, and the majority of people say that they're above average, which logically is not possible, but that's the sense of the human spirit. And the same is true of health. Even people with 3-4 comorbidities, 60% of them would rate their health as fair to good to brilliant. So we have this amazing ability to be in denial, which serves us well in some instances, but not so much in health. And I think the challenge for us is to overcome something that we call hyperbolic discounting. So we tend to underweight things that are in the future that we can't quite get to, and overweight the things that are immediate. So very practically, sickness, palliative care is easy to engage with. If I feel sick, I go to the doctor, I feel better. I don't really see the cost because it's typically paid by the insurer. that's engaging in sickness. Engaging in health is a little bit tougher. I mean, the costs are there up front and center. I have to pay for the gym. I have to put the effort in up front. But the rewards are actually a little bit more tangible. You don't get them the day that you do them. If I want to lose weight and I go for a run, it's not like I come back from the run and I've lost weight. I have to run a lot. I have to change my diet. It's a progression. Even then, I've lost some weight. I haven't seen the benefit of this in the future. So we focus a lot on bringing that experience, bringing those dynamics into the present and making it very real and visceral for the individual. One of the techniques is something called vitality age, which is an all-risk mortality adjusted age. Very fancy term, but it basically measures how you are relative to your chronological age. If I gave you a score, Jonathan, of your health is at 80%. For me, as an engineer, that was a distinction. I mean, that's brilliant. That's how the mind works. For some people, 70% is not that bad. You know? If I say to you that you're 3 years older than you should be, suddenly ego kicks in, and it's something that you can really relate to. So we really do try and frame things up in meaningful ways. I mean, that's one trick or one technique. And I think the other is placing incentives in the correct places. So being careful about being too outcomes focused. You know, we ran a study in South Africa where we incentivized people for weight loss, and what we found was people didn't succeed, got really angry because not only didn't they get the incentive, but they actually didn't lose the weight, and that's the point. So we flipped that around and incentivized people for trying, doing the right inputs, and the output measures will follow. So I'd say that for me is a key aspect to try and get right. That you realize it's not just about saying, gee, let's all get healthy. It's people have got real issues. So how do you support them in navigating on a whole person basis those issues and make it really personal, specific to them as well?
Yeah, so you've talked a bit about the incentives when you're designing programs to help people improve their health and become more engaged. What any other types of incentives or rewards that you might use in terms of structuring that for them to drive better outcomes?
Definitely. As I said, I'm quite long in the tooth industry. I've been with Vitality now 21 years. And when I first joined, this predates cell phones, predates websites. We had in the program a lot of great rewards, but they were all based on processes that the loyalty industry had at the time. Like if you wanted to go to gym, that's an anchor benefit. You get a voucher from us, take the voucher to gym. If you wanted to get a discount on your flights, you do the same. And we came up with this mantra of intuitive, real-time, integrated as a way of designing experiences. So the first thing for me is, and the lesson there for me was really inertia kills initiative. So if you can make things simple and intuitive for members and for employees, you really get profound changes in behavior. We were able to increase our engagement rates by 900% in 1 year, and our call rate for the program dropped by 27%, just with that simple design philosophy. It turns out that my grandmother was right. An apple a day does keep the doctor away. We had this gym program that was a use it and lose it thing. So you joined the program, you could join a gym for free, or for a small amount, and it was free provided you exercise. And that really, I mean, it grew that business dramatically. And fast forward to a few years ago, we innovated around a product with Apple Watch, where essentially you can get a beautiful Apple Watch for say $20. So that's your commitment, and then it's free provided you exercise. So if you don't exercise, you have to pay the watch off over 2 years. So there's amount that comes off every month. But if you do exercise, you don't pay at all. And you'd be amazed at how that loss aversion drives the right sort of behavior.
And can we flip that? So I've seen the opposite, where you do all these checkpoints, you hit all these benchmarks, and then at the end you get the Apple Watch. Do you see a difference in giving it up front and then having them pay it back versus the end goal?
Massive. The loss aversion program is far superior. In fact, Rand Europe did a study across 400,000 members, and they showed that there was a 34% increase in physical activity engagement and was sustained over the 2-year period. And the results were far more superior to cashback programs. I mean, it's an interesting way to think of it. If I say to you, I'm going to give you this value for exercising, that's a cashback, you'll monetize your activity and you'll work out that it's not really worth your while to exercise today because it's only 50 cents. But I flip that on its head and say, if you don't exercise, then we'll charge you for the watch. It's still the same economics, but you get this gearing of the behavior. So it is about putting the right incentive mechanics in place. I mean, yeah, a very good one is if you say to somebody, don't do this and you won't die. The threat of a loss of life doesn't really work. We've seen it with smoking. If you flip that on its head and talk about the benefits of healthy activity in your older ages with your grandchildren, you get a profound effect in terms of behavioral change. So a lot of this is about anchoring the behaviors and anchoring the messaging around what can ignites that individual in a present context, rather than taking into account carrot sticks that might have the wrong sort of behavior.
And as you're describing this, what my experience with organizations that have wellness programs and various initiatives to try to drive better employee health, they're almost always the opposite of what you're describing. It's almost always the long-term benefit focused on a reward down the line, focused on making sure that you take care of yourself so that you don't get lung cancer in the future, whatever. All these public awareness programs, a lot of organizational wellness initiatives, they're focusing, it sounds like, the opposite of what your research suggests is going to be most effective. And so then my question is, well, why? Yeah. I mean, if the research is so clear, why are people so slow to adopt a different approach? And what are the obstacles, to getting there?
I think it is a mindset change. I mean, if you look at the health insurance industry, there's a lot of talk about patient engagement. So I think through that, and I think, well, isn't that the heart of the problem, that you see people as patients? And the founder of our company started a health insurance business with the premise that if you focused on the demand side up front rather than the supply side, so instead of focusing on your contracting and all the rest of it, focusing on the demand side, getting people to interact with their lifestyle behaviors, you'd have a profound effect on the risk pool. And this has been demonstrated. I mean, we've got an automobile insurance program where it's very similar to what you'd see here in the States, where if you measure yourself, you get better rates. Now, what we do is we flip that on its head, and you get the benefit immediately. So at the gas station, you get a discount on your gas. But if you don't drive well, then the discount disappears, and you actually get behavior change as opposed to something that is just pre-selection, which is, safe drivers don't mind being recorded, so they would take that product. I think there is a lot of resistance to new ways of thinking. That is part of it, and quite frankly, I think there could be an element of design that isn't evidence-based. That I mean, we've seen these concepts successful in other businesses, so it's not. I don't want to report that we're the only people doing this, but I think an industry that says we'll give you value to doing a risk assessment. Yeah, we've never done that. What we've always said is there's value to be attained, and to unlock that, part of the process is to getting to know you, and part of that process is the risk assessment. So we don't monetize that action, because once you've monetized that action, then the next thing becomes more expensive. It's more, you're trying to get people to embrace that you're there to support them, and that you want the experience to be deeply personal for them, not just random cohorts that have been selected by someone, and then you guide them in the process. So I think it's a slightly different mindset if you start with the consumer in mind rather than the outcome to the risk pool in mind, which is quite frankly often what I see, that the objective is to lower the risk pool, but we don't approach it in a shared value approach, which basically says, if I would benefit from this behavior, how could I take some of that benefit and channel it back into the person that is creating the benefit?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is really important stuff for anyone listening today. Think about how your organization is structuring these types of programs, what your kind of motivational philosophy is for people? And are you doing more of an extrinsic carrot stick kind of an approach to drive, more healthy behaviors, or are you finding a way to tap into intrinsic motivation of individuals? And that was one thing that struck me as you described the difference between talking about someone's, danger of dying versus the ability for them to enjoy, later life with their grandkids and have fun
Yes,
with them.
exactly.
Right. Like that's tapping into my internal motivation, that, my love for family, my desire to be there for
It's
them.
your why.
It's my why. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so how often are we tapping into the why behind behavior in the workplace, whether it's health related or a variety of other types of issues, versus, we create these extrinsic types of motivators that kind of work, but often don't work as well as the intrinsic.
Yeah. No, I think you also need to, just coming back to the point of the triple bottom line. I mean, as an organization, most companies are looking after the health, paying for the health of their employees, being self-insured. And some are obviously small and are fully insured, but self-insured employee, yes, there's value to you in productivity, there's value to you in a lack of presenteeism, there's value to you in lowering those costs, but there's also societal value. I mean, the one we've spoken about, which is the cultural elements. If people do feel that you love them, you are looking after them, that's where you're coming from. There's benefits there, but there's broader societal impacts as well, which we've seen with being a health insurers in both South Africa and the UK, very large health insurers with massive data about actual claims, actual life insurance, actual death, that engaging on this vitality program actually has a very positive effect for folk relative to the risk of COVID. And we developed a COVID resilience index based on vitality engagement. So we've seen that people who are highly engaged, notice I said engaged, not active, people highly engaged demonstrate an 11% lower risk of hospitalization. And even those that are slightly engaged were to 6% lower. So I think there's a broader spin-off effect that you get on engaging with folk, to engage in their community, engaging in their health. It's not just about your bottom line. It's also about the impact of that individual's journey on in their life and how they're going to experience better quality of life later on in years. Are they increasing their lifespan? Are they increasing their health span? Will they be well looked after? Will they look after themselves as they get older? So it sounds ethereal, but quite frankly, it's not. It's a very practical and very deep responsibility that we have in terms of looking after an employed base. It's not just that the quid pro quo, Taylorist, give people money, you get something back. But I think it's far broader than that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Stephen, it has been a real pleasure chatting with you about all of these elements. And I completely agree about the triple bottom line, kind of having this general approach towards general public well-being with how we're approaching workplace health and prioritizing that within the workplace. So clearly, there's so many outcomes and benefits to organizations for focusing on this for their bottom line, but also for the individuals within their organizations, for society as a whole. And ultimately, I think this needs to be something of greater focus and prioritization. And we need to be thinking about how we design these programs in a way that can actually drive change, behavioral change in the lives of our people, so that we're not just going through the motions, checking the boxes and saying, yeah, we have a wellness program, check, we're done. And I see that in a lot of organizations here in the US too. They can claim they have something, they can list it on their employee benefits, but the utilization isn't very high, and ultimately the impact isn't very much. And so it's a really lost opportunity. Well, Stephen, as we wrap up today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, sure. So we're reachable on vitalitygroup.com. There's some great resources there, open to the public on return to work, dealing with COVID messaging. We've done it throughout the pandemic, well researched articles. There's a lot of toolkit work that, all that you do is go there and have a look at the toolkits. I think there's value for you there. I would say we, over since 2008, we started the business here in the US. We really have adopted a mentality of, if you've seen one employer, you've seen one employer. So the same care and focus that we take with the individual, we take with the individual organizations. A company is exactly that. It's a company of individuals. So the culture, the pains, they all are going to be a slightly different context, a slightly different problem to solve. And that, we've got quite a few arrows in our quiver. So we can solve some problems, we can get some expertise, but I think we're also very open to learning about what companies are struggling with, so that we can try and apply minds to help them. My sense is that most folk do want to lead change, and often it's very difficult to do so because there's a lot of moving parts. So we had to really support in making that slightly simpler, a bit more integrated, a bit more intuitive, and hopefully folk can see the benefit within their populations.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Stephen. It has just been a real pleasure talking with you. I feel like we've only scratched the surface. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, look more at your organization's research, figure out ways to leverage that and to make, excuse me, a real difference in your organizations. I encourage people to get connected, reach out. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you have a great week.